Pay no taxes in 2025, live completely tax-free. Is that really possible? Yes, it is possible, and in this video I will tell you how to do it. So if you live in a high-tax country like Germany, France, Canada or the UK, for example, it's very hard to imagine that there are countries where you don't have to pay taxes at all. And in fact, it has to be said that more and more tax loopholes, or let's say tax advantages, are being closed, but there are still opportunities to live completely tax-free. So you should really think about it very carefully, think specifically about going abroad and not using your money to support the state and the system in which you live. So ask yourself, what benefits do you personally really get from paying such high taxes and social security contributions, and be honest with yourself when answering the question, are you satisfied with what you get from the state for the high tax burden you have to pay? So depending on what you do for a living, if you are an entrepreneur or, for example, an investor or private individual, you can actually live tax-free. And in this video, I will explain you how you can do this, and above all, what you have to consider, of course. So first of all, it's very important to understand, in order for you to no longer have to pay taxes in almost every home country, you have to leave it. So no ifs or buts. And in some countries, you are no longer allowed to have a place of residence. So essentially no apartment of your own that you could move into at any time. Essentially, your home country is no longer allowed to be your place of habitual residence. And if you are married, if you have children, then the whole family in some cases has to come with you. For example, in Germany, you cannot leave your family behind. And there's also something similar in the UK, the so-called family ties. So in some cases, you cannot simply move to Dubai and then not pay taxes. The taxes will then continue to be due in your home country where you are tied to. And this is the first thing you need to think about very, very carefully. Can I leave my home country, or is it not possible for me for family reasons, for professional reasons, or because you are simply too attached to your home country? And if you can't do that, if you are not willing to relocate, then we actually don't need to talk anymore and you can basically turn off the video now. But many people can actually imagine it, and the last 4 years also helped quite a bit. You know what I'm talking about. And working abroad via Teams, via Zoom is now easily possible in many industries, not in all, but in many. And in addition, of course, many of you have now become wealthy here or have become particularly wealthy due to the rise of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and are saying, okay, I can actually go abroad now, I can quit my job, I can cash out my crypto. And that is actually the simplest case. So if you can live on your capital assets, be it stocks, crypto or anything else, then you can simply leave your home country in most cases, if there is nothing like an exit tax to consider, of course. So in some countries you have to pay an exit tax on your assets when you relocate, and these include, for example, crypto, shares in companies and things like this. But in many cases it is of course possible. It always depends a little bit on the individual case, but in many countries it is relatively easy to relocate without any tax implications. So there's no point in waiting for the next year. Just do it as quickly as possible if you can, of course. And now the question is, which countries are actually eligible here? And we want to take a look at some of the countries now. Let's first assume that you live from your capital assets, that you have capital income, stocks, dividends, cryptos, ETFs, and so on and so forth. And we assume that you don't trade full-time, and sometimes it is a little bit difficult to differentiate, but full-time means, for example, sitting in front of a monitor wall for 8 hours and ultimately trading like crazy. So we assume that you don't do that. Instead, you just do private wealth management. You do a trade every now and then, sell a position every now and then, buy a position every now and then. Then you are not trading, then you are doing personal asset management. And profits that you make as part of personal asset management are tax-free in many countries. For example, in Malta, Cyprus, often in Switzerland, in Thailand, in Dubai, of course. And then we can also list Panama, Costa Rica, and other countries. So essentially, there are a lot of options. And of course, you can also establish a life where you don't live in one place, but ultimately don't have to pay taxes anywhere. And we have discussed this in a previous video also. I can link it here. Well, the easiest thing is, as I said, to live on capital assets here. You can get out of your home country in most cases very, very quickly and usually without any negative tax effects. And you then have a few countries to choose from in Europe, but of course also outside of Europe, where you can live completely tax-free. And in some countries you have to be very careful not to transfer this earned capital income domestically. For example, this is the case in Ireland. If you have the non-dom status there, then the foreign income that you have earned is tax-free, but only as long as it remains abroad. And the same essentially applies in Thailand also. The rules were tightened somewhat here in 2024. So if you transfer income from abroad to Thailand, this transferred income is now taxable. Even if you use a foreign credit card in Thailand, this is also taxable in theory. And Portugal may also be interesting here. So the previous government, which then left office, stupidly abolished the NHR status. But the new government, which is now more conservative, wants to reintroduce this NHR status, even if in a slightly different form. But this could potentially result in very decisive tax advantages, especially for capital assets. But then you have to work in Portugal and have a job there, possibly with your own company. You have to pay tax on this income that you earn. And as I said, we are still waiting for more details, but it sounds a little bit similar to the Spanish Beckham law. And of course, that works too. So you can live in Spain, you can tax a certain salary in Spain, and then ultimately pay no taxes at all on your capital assets in Spain for 5 to 6 years. And in Portugal, it will then be 10 years with a new NHR status. But as I said, it's not entirely certain what will happen. And of course, that wouldn't be completely tax-free, because you would actually have to pay taxes on the income that you earn in Portugal, but it might still be interesting for some people. And if you are an entrepreneur and want to start a company abroad that you will be active with in the future, there are slightly fewer options, and many people here are talking about the US LLC. And the US LLC can be established as a disregarded entity, and the company is then transparent for tax purposes. So the LLC is not taxed at the corporate level, but you as a person are taxed at the private level then. And now comes the best part. If you do not have tax residency, which is the case in most countries, if you are there for no longer than 6 months per year, you can essentially run the LLC completely tax-free. And what you can also do, you live in countries with a territorial tax system that does not tax foreign income. And this is the case, for example, in Panama, in Paraguay or Malaysia. And then you can also run the LLC completely tax-free. Another option is Dubai, of course. There is now a corporate tax, but there are also 2 tax reliefs. Firstly, there is a so-called small business relief. And if your turnover, not the profit, is less than 80 trillion, which is about 800,000 USD, you don't pay tax. And secondly, the first 375,000 AED profit, which is about 100k USD, is generally tax-free. And you have to take into account that salaries also reduce the company's profit, so you can therefore pay yourself a reasonably high salary in your own company. And then the salary is in turn tax-free, so you don't have to pay any personal income tax, and the company's profit is also lowered, so you also pay less tax at company level. The Bahamas or Cayman Islands, for example, would also be ideal if you were starting a company. There are also no taxes to be paid, but even if such a company in such an exotic destination is not for you, you could, for example, set up a company in England, for example, a limited company, and then have your place of residence in a country like UAE and simply receive a salary from this company in the UK. And this would then be tax-free in Dubai. And in England, the profits would then be reduced. So as an example, let's say the company in England makes a profit of £200,000, and then you have this £200,000 paid out to you as a salary in Dubai, where it is tax-free. And then of course the company in England has no profit and pays again no tax. So such models are also possible. Another option is, for example, visas for digital nomads, which are available in various countries. Specifically, I can think of the Rantau nomad visa in Malaysia or the digital nomad visa in Argentina or Costa Rica, for example. And with these visas, you can also live in these countries and can even work locally, meaning your source of income is from inside the country. And then you don't have to pay taxes on this income for a certain period of time. So as you can see, there are many options for how you can organize your life tax-free, and those were just a few options. However, the most popular models at the moment are a US LLC, a Dubai setup, which in my opinion only makes sense if you also live there, and a Cyprus setup. In Cyprus, you only pay 12.5% corporate tax with your company, and dividends from your company to you are completely tax-free for 17 years with a non-dom status. So you pay yourself a dividend instead of a salary, and then the total tax burden is a very comfortable 12.5%. And you can then also invest in crypto with your company, for example, and profits would then not be tax-free, but the total tax burden would still be very low at 12.5%. So if you also want to minimize your tax burden, if you want to relocate or set up a company abroad, please contact us, click on the first link in the description. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one. Bye.